Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If you love captivating stories about men transforming into women in unique and fascinating ways, then be sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Now, let's jump right into today's tale.
Kristin stood in front of her full-length mirror, giving herself a once-over as she adjusted the hem of her fitted dark-wash jeans. The premium denim hugged her curves in a way that felt both comfortable and deliberately enticing, striking that perfect balance between casual weekend wear and I made an effort. Her outfit was casual but effortlessly sexy, a deep red, off-the-shoulder top that hugged her curves just right, the color complementing her auburn hair and making her green eyes pop. The neckline revealed just enough collarbone and shoulder to be alluring without trying too hard, while the fabric clung to her waist before draping elegantly over her hips. "Is this too much?" she asked her reflection, turning slightly to check the rear view. The jeans definitely accentuated assets that Kyle had never possessed, creating a silhouette that was undeniably feminine, and if she was being honest with herself, pretty spectacular. She paired the top with a sleek leather jacket, buttery soft black leather, that added just the right amount of edge to the ensemble, and ankle boots with a modest heel that lengthened her legs without sacrificing comfort. A delicate gold necklace and small hoop earrings completed the look, adding sparkle without being flashy. "Not bad, Thompson," she murmured, still not entirely used to addressing her reflection with that level of appreciation. Not bad at all. Her hair was styled in loose waves, the rich red cascading just past her shoulders in a way that somehow managed to look both carefully arranged and effortlessly tousled. She'd spent a solid 30 minutes watching YouTube tutorials on how to achieve the look, shocked at the dexterity her hands seemed to possess when wielding a curling iron. Her makeup was just enough to be flirty but natural. A touch of mascara that made her lashes look impossibly long, a subtle shimmer on her cheeks that caught the light when she turned her head, and a soft, glossy lip that made her mouth look fuller without screaming, trying too hard. "The YouTube beauty gurus would be proud," she remarked with a small laugh, remembering how she'd once mocked Kyle's ex-girlfriend for spending so much time on such things. The irony wasn't lost on her. She looked good. Scratch that. She looked damn good. The kind of good that would have made Kyle do a double take in a bar. The kind of good that was specifically calibrated to make Daniel Carter lose his train of thought mid-sentence. And she couldn't deny it. She felt excited. A buzz of anticipation hummed through her veins, a mixture of nervousness and eagerness that made her feel slightly lightheaded. Was this how it always felt for women before dates? This strange cocktail of confidence and insecurity, power and vulnerability. "Get it together," she told herself firmly. "It's just football and buffalo wings. With an obscenely attractive man. In your apartment. Alone." Put that way, it didn't sound simple at all. The past week had been a whirlwind, and somehow Daniel Carter had become a large part of it. After their marathon meeting turned flirtation session, they'd been texting daily, sometimes about the project, but more often about fantasy football stats, Bourbon recommendations, and increasingly bold innuendos that made her blush even when no one was around to see it. "Your quarterback looked shaky in practice yesterday," Daniel had texted on Thursday. "Might want to reconsider your starting lineup this week." "Inside information," she'd replied. "That sounds suspiciously like cheating, Mr. Carter." "Not cheating, just good research," he'd countered. "And I told you, it's Daniel. Unless you'd prefer more creative forms of address." The suggestion had made her fumble her phone, like it was suddenly red hot. What had happened to the shy moment when he'd asked for her number? That version of Daniel seemed to have been replaced by an increasingly confident flirt, who knew exactly the effect his messages were having. "I think I'll stick with Daniel for now," she'd replied. "Though I reserve the right to use less flattering terms if your football predictions prove inaccurate." "Fair enough," he'd texted back. Looking forward to proving myself worthy of more favorable nomenclature on Saturday. 7 p.m., still good. And 10. Perfect, she confirmed, already mentally cataloging her closet for the right outfit. Now, with just 30 minutes until his arrival, Kristin was making final preparations. The living room was immaculate, casual enough to be comfortable, but tidy enough to show she cared. The massive projection screen was set up for the game, a cutting-edge system that made Kyle's old TV setup look like ancient technology. In the kitchen, buffalo wings were marinating in a family recipe that had somehow transferred into Kristin's memory, along with her design expertise. Craft beers chilled in the refrigerator alongside a bottle of champagne. Because why not? And various game day snacks were artfully arranged on serving platters. Too much, she wondered aloud, surveying the spread. Not enough? What's the protocol here? Dating as Kyle had been straightforward, if not always successful. Dating as Kristin was an entirely different game, with rules she was still learning. Add in the complication that she was attracted to a man, a completely new experience that still sent her brain into occasional tailspins, and the whole situation was a recipe for panic. Yet, surprisingly, panic wasn't what she felt as she made a final adjustment to her hair. Instead, there was that unfamiliar flutter of excitement, a warmth that spread through her chest when she thought about seeing Daniel again. Her phone buzzed with a text notification. On my way. Bringing that bourbon I promised, and a wager that might interest you. Hope you're ready to lose gracefully. Kristin smiled despite herself, typing a quick response. Wings are ready. Beer is cold. And my team is about to crush yours. As for losing gracefully, not a skill I possess, I'm afraid. His reply came almost instantly. Another thing we have in common. See you soon, Kristin. She set the phone down, that flutter intensifying. What was it about this man that had gotten under her skin so quickly? Was it just her new body's hormones going haywire? The novelty of experiencing attraction from a female perspective? Or was there something genuinely special about Daniel Carter, beyond his obvious physical appeal? The doorbell rang, interrupting her spiraling thoughts. He was early, another sign of eagerness that sent a pleasant shiver down her spine. Kristin took one last look in the mirror, straightening her shoulders and taking a deep breath. Game time, she murmured, a smile playing at her glossy lips as she turned toward the door. Whatever came next, she was suddenly surprisingly looking forward to it. Kristin had spent every evening after work at her grandmother's house, diving deep into magic lessons. The attic space that had once been forbidden to Kyle was now her classroom, a mystical sanctuary where candles flickered with flames that sometimes changed color depending on her mood. Ancient books yielded their secrets in ways that defied conventional explanation. No, dear, like this, her grandmother had corrected on Tuesday evening, gently adjusting Kristin's fingers as she attempted a simple locator spell. The intention must flow from your center, through your arm, and out your fingertips. Magic isn't just words and gestures, it's channeling energy. I feel ridiculous, Kristin had muttered, wiggling her fingers in the prescribed pattern. Like I'm in a bad fantasy movie. Her grandmother had clucked her tongue disapprovingly. That attitude is precisely why men can't access our family's magic. Too much doubt, too much ego. Feel the energy, don't analyze it. To Kristin's shock, when she'd finally stopped overthinking and simply let her body follow the motions, the small crystal on the table had actually moved, spinning slowly at first, then faster, before pointing unerringly toward the lost earring her grandmother had hidden as a test. Holy shit, Kristin had breathed, staring at the crystal. Did I do that? Language, her grandmother had admonished, though her eyes sparkled with pride. But yes, you did. The magic is strong in you, just as I suspected. Her grandmother had been thrilled to finally have someone to pass down her knowledge to. After decades of keeping her abilities largely hidden, of practicing in solitude, of watching her daughter, Kristin's mother, grow up without the gift, she finally had an heir to her magical legacy. "You should have seen your great-grandmother," Gran had reminisced on Wednesday night as they sat among stacks of grimoires. Now there was a witch during the war. She used her abilities to help families find lost soldiers. The military consulted her, though they never officially acknowledged it, of course. "Seriously?" Kristin had asked, pausing in her attempt to light a candle with just her mind. "The government worked with witches." "Governments have always known about magic," Gran had replied with a knowing smile. "They simply find it convenient to deny it publicly while exploiting it privately. Your great-grandmother helped locate 3 downed pilots that conventional search parties had given up on. Saved their lives." "That's actually pretty amazing," Kristin had admitted, imagining her stern-faced great-grandmother from the photographs using her powers for such noble purposes. Each night had been a mix of history, spellwork, and practical exercises, followed by home-cooked meals and long talks that stretched well into the evening. They'd sit at Gran's kitchen table, surrounded by the comforting scents of herbal teas and freshly baked cookies, discussing the family's magical heritage and Kristin's rapidly developing abilities. "You're progressing faster than I expected," Gran had noted on Thursday night, as Kristin successfully completed a minor weather manipulation, creating a tiny rain cloud above a withering plant on the windowsill. "It typically takes months to achieve that level of elemental control." "Maybe I'm just naturally talented," Kristin had suggested with a smirk. "Or maybe," Gran had countered, "the luck enhancement is working in your favor, even with magical training. A fortuitous feedback loop, if you will. So, I'm lucky at being magical, which makes me more magically lucky." Kristin had laughed. "That's either brilliant or completely unfair." "Magic often walks that line," Gran had replied with a wink. "Why do you think witches have such complicated ethics systems?" Kristin had learned just how deep magic ran in their family, how it had always been a part of her, even before she had known. Gran had explained that Kyle's occasional hunches, his eerily accurate predictions about certain events, his uncanny ability to find lost items, all had been faint echoes of magic, trying to express itself through an incompatible vessel. "Magic always finds a way," Gran had explained, stirring honey into her tea with a spoon that continued circling on its own when she removed her hand. "In men of our bloodline, it manifests as enhanced intuition or occasional flashes of insight. But in the women, that's where it truly flourishes." "So Kyle wasn't completely, magically null?" Kristin had asked, watching the self-stirring spoon with fascination. "Of course not," Gran had replied. "The potential was always there, just inaccessible. Like having a beautiful instrument you can't play because your hands are the wrong shape. The transformation didn't create your magic, Kristin. It simply allowed what was already there to finally emerge." And honestly, she loved it. It felt natural, like she had finally unlocked a missing piece of herself. Each spell, each incantation, each magical theory felt right in a way that defied logical explanation. The sensation of energy flowing through her body, when she successfully cast a spell, was exhilarating, a rush more potent than any adrenaline spike Kyle had ever experienced. "You're a natural," Gran had declared proudly. On Friday evening, after Kristin had managed a complex illusion spell that made a pencil appear to be floating in midair. Some witches study for years to achieve that level of visual manipulation. "Maybe I missed my calling," Kristin had joked. "Should have been a magician instead of a designer." "The two aren't as different as you might think," Gran had replied thoughtfully. "Both require visualization, attention to detail, and an understanding of how perception shapes reality. Your design skills and your magical abilities draw from the same well of talents." Then there was work. To her, continued Surprise, Everything just flowed. The design concepts, client interactions, management decisions, all came to her with an ease that still seemed surreal. On Wednesday, she'd led a team meeting about the Westfield project's final phase, outlining a vision so clear and compelling that even the usually cynical contractors had nodded along enthusiastically. The transitional spaces need to feel like palate cleansers, she'd explained, sketching a quick concept on the whiteboard. When clients move from the energetic public areas to the more serene private spaces, the journey should reset their sensory experience. That's actually brilliant, her project manager had admitted. The alcoves we've been struggling with could serve that exact purpose. Her instincts, her decision-making, her ability to command a room, it all felt like second nature, like she had been doing this for years. Thursday had brought a difficult client who had initially rejected 3 different concept proposals, until Kristin had somehow persuaded him with a compromise solution that had appeared in her mind fully formed. "How did you know that's exactly what I wanted?" the client had asked, clearly impressed. "Good design is about listening between the lines," Kristin had replied smoothly, the words coming naturally. "Hearing what you need, not just what you say you want." She loved every minute of it. The creative challenges, the problem-solving, the satisfaction of seeing her visions take physical form. It was miles away from Kyle's mind-numbing spreadsheet job. Even the difficult parts, budget constraints, impossible deadlines, demanding clients, provided a kind of stimulating friction that Kyle's work had never offered. On Friday afternoon, her CFO had presented quarterly projections that showed Thompson Design was on track for its most profitable year ever. "The quantum innovations contract alone would push us into a whole new bracket," he'd explained, pointing to a particularly impressive upward trend on his chart. "Not to mention the referrals it's likely to generate." Kristin had nodded, trying to look like this information wasn't completely mind-blowing to someone who, a week ago, had been struggling to make rent. "Excellent work, everyone. Let's make sure we deliver an experience that justifies these numbers." But the biggest surprise of the week. Daniel. Daniel. His presence had woven through her days like a persistent melody. Text messages during meetings, phone calls that stretched far beyond professional necessity. Even a surprise delivery of gourmet coffee beans on Wednesday, with a note that read simply, "Fuel for creative genius." Looking forward to Saturday. "Someone's got an admirer," Jason had teased when the package arrived. And not just any admirer, the kind with excellent taste and a black Amex. "It's just coffee," Kristin had demurred, though she couldn't help the smile that tugged at her lips. "Honey, that single-origin Ethiopian geisha that costs more than my weekly grocery budget," Jason had countered. "That's not just coffee, that's I'm thinking about you and want to impress you coffee." The texts had evolved throughout the week, growing increasingly personal and flirtatious. Monday had been mostly business, with a few football references thrown in. By Thursday, they were exchanging messages late into the night about favorite books, travel destinations, and increasingly daring innuendo. "Just finished reviewing your latest concept sketches?" Daniel had texted on Friday afternoon. "Your attention to detail is stimulating." "Careful, Mr. Carter," she'd replied. "That almost sounds like you're mixing business with pleasure." His response had been immediate. "I prefer to think of it as finding pleasure in business. Though I'm looking forward to exploring the reverse concept tomorrow." The message had made her blush so deeply that Jason, walking by her office, had actually stopped to ask if she was feeling feverish. Now, as she prepared for Daniel's arrival, Kristin couldn't help but marvel at how quickly her life had transformed. In just 7 days, she'd gone from being Kyle Thompson, unremarkable, struggling, chronically unlucky, to Kristin Thompson, successful designer, budding witch, and apparently irresistible to at least one extremely eligible bachelor. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was utterly, completely insane. And as the doorbell rang, signaling Daniel's arrival, she couldn't deny the flutter of anticipation that rose in her chest. Whatever was happening, wherever this strange new path was leading her, at least it wasn't boring.